Welcome to Grab or Stab. I'm Matt McFarland. Here we grab if it's good and we stab if it's not. Have you ever wondered what happened right after Sally escaped the Sawyer house in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie? Did Sally really survive? Did the cops ever go over to the Sawyer house? And are the rumors true that the truck driver can still be seen to this day at Texas Roadhouse devouring those sweet, sweet rolls? Well, in this 7th edition to the franchise, we get answers to some of those questions. Today we'll be talking about the sequel to the original Chainsaw movie, Texas Chainsaw 3D, released in 2013. But before we get into all of that, let me explain the criteria on how decisions are made around this place on whether or not to grab or stab a movie. First of all, it comes down to how good are the kills? Second, the characters. Third, how did the movie affect either the genre or the franchise at the time? And lastly, how scary is it?
Texas Chainsaw 3D gets the pleasure of following in the footsteps of the successful remake and prequel made by Platinum Dunes and New Line Cinema. Both of those companies decided 2 movies was enough, so Lionsgate Films stepped in. Despite missing its intended October 2012 release and coming out in January of 2013, for the 3rd time in a row, a Chainsaw movie was a financial success. This one was created on a $20 million budget and grossed about $47 million despite its pretty lackluster reviews. Directed by John Lucenhop, this addition to the franchise follows Heather, a young woman who finds out she's not only adopted, but just inherited a bunch of shit in Texas from a grandmother she had no idea existed. So along with a few friends, they decide to road trip down there and see what grandma left behind. Turns out the inheritance is not just a set of pearls, it's a mansion and some sweaty man-child in the basement. Leatherface this go-around is played by the 6'6" Dan Yeager, who throughout the film emphasized what a hero Gunnar Hansen was to him growing up, and how surreal it was to get this role. Despite submissions for the role from dozens of large football player-type physiques, that's not how director John Lucenhop envisioned the character. He wanted Leatherface to have a bit of a belly like a large, normal older man would. But what really sold them on Dan was what they called his frightening eyes, which they viewed as crucial for the character.
I think Leatherface is unique in the pantheon of horror icons. He's been trained from childhood to perform a particular killing function. He's afraid of the world. He grew up with a family of people who all did his thinking for him. He was an instrument.
Excluding the awful rendition to the original mask at the beginning of the movie, Leatherface wears 3 different masks in this movie.
As makeup effects artist Mike McCarty puts it, one mask was described as Leatherface's favorite slippers, the mask he wears around the house the majority of the time, and the other masks are more terrifying and distorted slaughterhouse-type masks. What's unique about Texas Chainsaw 3D in comparison to the rest of the franchise is that Leatherface is supposed to be a sympathetic villain this time. Yeah, he still murders people, skins them, casually wears their face around, and really just does a lot of fucked up shit. But regardless, the writing wanted you to really hate the other antagonist family in the movie, the Hartmans.
Yeah, you heard me right. You've got the Sawyers, who kill, torture, and eat people, but don't worry about them. You're actually supposed to hate the Hartmans more. And what did the Hartmans do that was so bad? They killed those lovely, misunderstood, flesh-eating psychopaths. So Chainsaw fans definitely get answers to some of the biggest franchise questions in this movie. But will the answers be satisfying enough? Before we grab or stab this one, we need to get into the movie for a bit.
To start off the movie, as this is a direct sequel to the original, the opening credits remind folks what happened in the 1974 film. Following the clips to set up the next scenes, the movie really begins in Sheriff Hooper's patrol car. The sheriff is played by Thom Barry, who is answering a call about an incident at the Sawyer home, as reported by Sally Hardesty, the final girl from the original movie who's on her way to the hospital. As he arrives on the scene, 2 armed people run into the slaughterhouse, and he quickly realizes this isn't going down how he hoped.
I ain't leaving, Drayton. I have a girl says you butchered her friends. No one's turning a blind eye to this.
As you can see, the home from the original movie is back. Well, sort of. The original home has since been taken apart, moved, and turned into a restaurant, So instead, the home was recreated as best they could. I thought they did a pretty damn good job, especially for the fact that they filmed the scene in Louisiana and not in Texas. So shout out to location manager Kendrick Hudson for finding a property that looks so similar to the original. Also, due to Jim Cito's passing in 2003, we have a new Drayton Sawyer, and you may recognize the familiar face as it's Bill Moseley, who played the ridiculous character Chop Top Sawyer in the second movie. He's not the only familiar face, as John Dugan's back playing Grandpa, and the original Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen, is also playing another Sawyer, but not Leatherface this time. The three were all incredibly impressed with how close the home looked to the original and really felt like it brought them back in time to the movie that started their careers. Sheriff Hooper's asking the family to surrender Jed Leatherface Sawyer to authorities for the crimes being reported.
Two things: who are these random people in the house, and what is that on Leatherface?
As we get a look at the shitty rendition to the original mask they slap on Leatherface in this one. What is that, plastic? Uh-oh, more folks are showing up for the shit show. Some other folks in the town are here to stir things up a bit, led by future city mayor Bert Hartman, played by Paul Ray, who's a real piece of work and the eventual main bad guy of the movie. Now Hooper's like, let's try to calm things down a bit, and like they said, they're gonna give up Leatherface.
That's your delivery!
No!
Oh fuck, never mind.
And an all-out shootout ensues, where most of the Sawyers, including Grandpa, are shot and killed. And just as the locals intended, the home burns to the ground. And after it's nice and crispy, the heathens scour the property for treasures and bodies, finding Leatherface's chainsaw in the process. In filming this scene, they really did burn down the replica house, and they used local firefighters to help contain the fire. As this is happening, a man named Gavin Miller wanders off and finds Loretta Sawyer lying injured with a baby in her hands. Miller takes the baby and then punts Loretta's face, killing her in the process. Gavin's wife, Arlene Miller, waiting in the car, is presented with the baby. As the couple is having infertility issues, she's elated and insists on keeping the baby. And yeehaw! The Sawyers are dead, so let's get a little group shot to celebrate. Following the 3D movie title sequence, we fast forward to present day. We're now in a grocery store meat section where we meet our final girl Heather Miller, played by Alexandra Daddario, who was very early in her acting career here. Also an interesting choice to play the character, as she's way younger than the actual character's supposed to be, which according to the timeline, her character's supposed to be pushing 40. I'll explain more about that later. Next, we meet Heather's boyfriend Ryan, who sure as hell has no chance to survive in this movie with that kind of technique. Ryan's played by singer Trey Songz. This was his biggest role up to this point in his life, and at the time was definitely the most famous person in the movie, often getting stopped by locals wanting a picture in between scenes. Trey was well liked on set and even stopped making records for a little while to really focus on his role in this movie. Next, we get our first little hint at Heather Sawyer's heritage, as she's got this weird-ass bone artwork she's been working on. As Trey's rounding first base, they're interrupted by a ring at the door. A letter is dropped off letting Heather know that her grandmother passed away 3 weeks ago, a grandmother she didn't know existed. Following the letter, Heather approaches her parents about this newfound knowledge. Her shitty parents confess to her that she is indeed adopted and comes from a horrible family. The letter also encourages Heather to come back to Texas to settle the inheritance that will be there waiting for her when she gets back. Back at Heather's place, we get to meet Nikki's new man, Kenny, who, if you couldn't already tell, is supposed to play the prototypical artsy guy who has about a 100% chance of getting cut the fuck up in this movie.
That's really cool art.
The group's here to surprise Heather that they're all going to go to Texas with her.
And the Leatherface body count just keeps on going up.
The road trip starts with a little drinking and then a stop to get some gas and some snacks. As they leave the gas station, they run over a hitchhiker named Daryl, who shakes it off and asks if he can catch a ride. Daryl is played by actor Sean Sippos. The group arrives in Texas and immediately heads to Mimi's house. Shortly after arriving at a big-ass gate, grandmother's lawyer, Mr. Farnsworth, shows up. Mr. Farnsworth is played by Richard Reel, who you might recognize from Office Space.
Well, all right. It was a jump to conclusions, Matt.
He seems a little uneasy that she arrived with a group of friends, but doesn't say why.
I'm picking up what you're putting down though.
He hands her a keyring fit for a janitor and then a very important letter from Grandma. As he leaves, he reminds Heather not to forget reading Grandma's really important letter.
What do you think? Do you think she reads it? No way.
The group wants to get their steps in and has Ryan drive ahead while the four of them walk behind the van. Holy shit, how big is this property? Well, really big, as the group excitedly walks up to find Grandma left her a mansion. While admiring the house, Ryan and Nikki decide to dust off the pool table and also hint to us that they're fucking. After Heather wanders around the family graveyard, the group makes the brilliant decision to head to the grocery store while leaving the stranger at Grandma's house full of nice shit.
God, is he a Boy Scout or what?
I wonder what's gonna happen here.
Yeah, I'm a regular Boy Scout.
As Daryl ransacks the place, the rest of the group make it to town, and it's pretty apparent they stick out like sore thumbs. The group immediately gets the attention of Mayor Bert Hartman, who you probably recognize from the beginning of the movie.
Wish I had a swing like that in my backyard.
Yeah, that's something, all right.
Hello, precious. Woo.
As Ryan's just minding his own business and trying to buy some Cool Whip, Nikki goes reaching for the hot dogs and confirms that they have fucked.
Listen, it was one time. And I had like 18 kamikazes, come on.
Back at Grandma's house, Daryl's determined to find out which door fits the big-ass Willy Wonka key. He stumbles upon a hidden door in the kitchen which leads down to a wine cellar. Oh look, the house is also an investment property. They must have a bed and breakfast in the basement. The somewhat looking fresh dinner plate ain't gonna stop Daryl from trying to pry open the metal door. He looks for something to pry the door open with, but he finds a real bad migraine at the hands of Jed, who must have snuck out of the burning house and looks way different, probably because he's in his 70s now. Jed was real attached to Grandma's silver, so he turns Daryl's head into avocado toast with a meat tenderizer. And with all the folks who died in the beginning of the movie, we're now into like double-digit kills already or something. This death was filmed using a foam hammer to start the kill, then finished with a fake head and a real hammer. They made a cast of actor Sean Sippo's upper body and filled it with fake blood and brain matter. So when Leatherface hits the head with the real hammer, it gets real messy. I wish they would have leaned into using more practical effects like this later on in the movie.
CGI can go fuck itself.
Back in town, Heather gets into a little chit-chat with Officer Carl, who's not so subtly trying to flirt with her.
Well, you best keep it down. I'd hate to have to haul you in.
Carl's played by Clint Eastwood's son, Scott Eastwood, who, no offense, is a terrible actor. The mayor interrupts the two and then is pleasantly surprised to find out that Heather's a Sawyer. Then he wastes no time making it apparent what a slimeball he is.
Gonna hardball me, huh? Hell, I like you already.
Come on, let's go.
Come on, give me a number.
As the group arrives back at Grandma's house, they quickly realize, oh, maybe it was a bad idea to let a guy they just met house sit Heather's new mansion. But it's not something some red Solo cups can't fix, right? Besides, Grandma paid for this shit anyways.
To the Sawyers.
Kenny's cooking up dinner for the crew while Ryan listens to some of his own music while sipping and playing some pool. Kenny also notices the secret kitchen door and heads down the stairs. Bad idea, Kenny! Damn, who spilled red wine all over the place? Kenny's kind of feeling like Daryl might be down here, but follows the sound of metal down the hallway. And poof, out from the darkness pops Leatherface Jed. And being that Kenny's the artsy character and not the athletic one, he hasn't quite learned that crawling up the stairs isn't as fast as running. So that means a good meat hook to the back is in order as Leatherface yanks him back down to the lair. Nobody hears what's going on, and Nikki then pops into the pool room freaked out about something and takes Ryan to go show her what it was. She drags him to a barn, and that's not horse manure you're smelling, that's Nikki's morals. Turns out the reason she scared the shit out of Ryan was that she actually just wanted to lead him somewhere she could get another piece of that ass.
I told you it was fucked up.
While Ryan's showing Nikki his jewels, Heather's looking around at some of the family jewels upstairs. Ah, what a beautiful dress. Is that from JCPenney? Sweet Jesus! Heather stumbles upon Grandma, who's not actually in her grave but died just sitting in her chair. Rightfully freaked out, she runs off looking for Ryan.
Oh wait, that's not Ryan, and those are not sausages.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, Heather. Go to sleep. As she awakes, she quickly realizes that's not the sound of the Johnsons next door trimming their hedges. That's Jed Sawyer trimming off someone's leg. Then she gets the pleasure of watching Kenny get tossed up onto a meat hook. Whoa, Kenny, you know that you never ever touch Jed's mask. That's gonna cost you, buddy, as Jed cuts Kenny in half in one of the bloodiest and most gruesome moments in the franchise. Yep, and they show the entire thing too. Originally, the script had Kenny die in a different way, but the director thankfully realized they didn't have a chainsaw kill in the entire movie, so they decided to let Leatherface cut Kenny in half.
Can I lose my legs?
Yeah, well, you're gonna get cut completely in half.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Did they tell you that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
What a nice surprise.
Heather then takes off upstairs and out the front door. Ah shit, there were stairs there this entire time? This next sequence is just straight up stupid. Heather makes a ton of noise, is not hidden at all, and still somehow Jed can't find her? Now, well aware that Grandma's casket's empty, Heather then decides that hiding in there is the route. Jed agrees this would be a likely spot and cuts into it, but missing Heather. Ryan and Nikki decide to pull out and check to see what the hell's going on, attracting Jed in the process. The two run back to the Shmush barn and even try to shoot Jed. Heather then crashes through the barn, picks them up, and they drive away. Ryan, you really should wait for the gate to open. Ryan? 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 Damn it, Ryan. They do eventually get out of the gate, but as they leave, Jed smartly takes out a tire. I actually laughed out loud at this next scene as Jed stands there, admiring his work, tilts his head a little, and then just waits for the van to crash, and crash it does. Inside the van now, oh, he looks dead, and well, okay, I guess that's how Ryan's dying in this movie. That sucks. And adding to the giant list of stupid decisions these victims make, Heather and Nikki decide the best course of action is to shush each other in the car like Jed can't actually see them. And as you would expect, Jed just casually walks up to the van and starts fucking shit up. As he does, Nikki gets a bad gash on her leg and across her chest. However, before he can definitively kill Nikki, Heather leads him away to the state fair. Fun fact, notice the pig head from Saw right there? Well, in the original script, Leatherface was supposed to saw him right in half, but they had to cut that for budgetary reasons. The two then run through the crowd for a bit before ultimately ending up at the Ferris wheel. Here we get to witness yet another edition of stupid shit victims do in this movie. Leatherface here is just like, I'll just wait for you over here then, I guess. But his plan does get interrupted. Ah shit, Carl the cop is working the fair tonight. And as much as we like to make fun of 3D movies, I know those of you who saw this in the theater jumped right there. Able to distract Carl with the saw, Jed gets away through the woods. Back at the police station, Sheriff Hooper now has Jed's chainsaw as evidence and hears over the radio that one of his troopers has arrived at the crash scene. Heather's at the station too for questioning as she's claiming this lumberjack killed all of her friends. The sheriff is skeptical about her story until he finds out that Heather's a Sawyer, the lumberjack's a man wearing a human mask, and her story all went down in and around her grandmother's house. Mayor Burt arrives at the station pretty heated.
Some fucking crazy just tore up the carnival. I need to know what the police are gonna do about it. My office.
Sheriff Hooper breaks him the news that Jed Sawyer might actually be alive. Back at the Carsons' home, we've got a combination of an overly trigger-happy Officer Marvin combined with a Sawyer-hating mayor, which isn't a good combination. The sheriff tells the officer to stand down and wait outside the property, but the mayor gets him to do otherwise. While this is all going down, Heather's going through her old police files on her family where she learns her entire family backstory. Mayor Burt and the officer decide while he sweeps Grandma's house it would be a good idea to FaceTime the entire thing. Well, at least Jed gets an audience while he does what he does best. The officer follows the trail of blood down to Jed's lair where he finds dresses, makeup, and a hell of a lot of bodies chopped up. And what would be a TCM movie without a cheeky little freezer scene? Oh hey, Nikki's not dead. Oh whoops, never mind. As the startled officer one-taps her in the face. The FaceTime call fails and the officer heads back upstairs where Jed's waiting for him and takes the cop down with his hatchet. All of this is bringing up some old memories for Mayor Burt and he's getting a little feisty.
I want to see the Sawyer girl. She's a victim, Burt. She hasn't done anything. She's free, then, ain't she?
But Heather's left the police station not before writing murderers on the old group photo from the beginning of the movie. Heather then calls up Farnsworth and asks him why the hell he let them stay at the house. Farnsworth agrees to meet her at the bar down the road to explain everything.
Have you ever wondered how Leatherface keeps those masks nice and snug while he's doing all of his chainsaw stuff?
Well, we finally get to find out his secret. He sews the damn thing onto his face. That's dedication, bro. At the bar, Farnsworth tells Heather she messed up pretty bad not reading the letter right away and the maniac with the mask is Jedediah Sawyer, her cousin. He's mentally stunted and has the emotions of an 8-year-old. As long as Heather tells him who she is, Jed will protect her, which is especially important now that Mayor Burt knows she read the police file with the town's little dirty secret. Ah shit, speak of the devil, here comes the mayor now. Heather escapes the bar and runs into Carl the cop again. She explains that her lawyer was beaten up and Carl asks where the Civilian Medal of Honor should go. Jokes aside, he offers her a ride and immediately flips a switch on her. Turns out Carl the cop is actually Mayor Burt Hartman's son and is in the Sawyer killing business too.
You know, I thought you were pretty cute.
Heather's really starting to understand this Hartman-Sawyer beef and you can really start to see her character lean into this rivalry. Turns out Carl's taking Heather to the old slaughterhouse for a meeting with the mayor. Slight problem for the Hartmans though is that Jed heard the entire plan over the radio and wants in on the action too.
They filmed this scene at an ammo factory at Camp Minden in Louisiana. It often even got up to 110 degrees inside at night. Now, this didn't really have as much appeal to me as some of the previous portrayals of the slaughterhouse in the other movies.
Big scene coming up, man. They're gonna be pounding and pounding, and grinding. Oh man, it's gonna be terrific.
Carl ties up Heather and then goes to greet his pops. As Jed finds Heather and is about to give her the saw, he notices Heather's marking on her chest, which is the Sawyer's family logo. Upon noticing this, he quickly starts cutting her free, but Bert and his sidekick Ollie interrupt the two and start beating the living shit out of Jed. As Heather has her chance to escape, the Sawyer fighting spirit takes over and she can't let this happen to her cousin. So like Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th Part 3, she pitchforks Ollie straight in the belly with some totally real blood effects. Bert's next on the list, which gives us the pleasure of watching one of the greatest lines in cinematic history.
Do your thing, cuz.
Fucking hell.
Jed and Bert fight for a moment before Jed ultimately goes for his version of the Chucky Achilles move. As this is all going down, Sheriff Hooper has now arrived and has decided what's more important, law and order or the chance to knock off the top Hartman. Hooper must be a fan of cool movie kills just like us because he decides he'd rather watch Bert get his hands chopped off before falling into the meat grinder.
I like where your head's at, Hooper.
Now, I know the special effects are pretty bad here, but it's a pretty hilarious kill. Yeah, fuck yo hands, Bert.
Clean this shit up.
Now, I have no idea if they sanitized the slaughterhouse, but being that Jed's now supposed to be in his 70s, this has been far too much action for a senior citizen for one day. So Jed and Heather head back to Grandma's to rest up. We may be cousins, but don't you dare think that means you can touch my mask. Just ask your pal Kenny. Heather finally reads Grandma's letter, which blah 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 says your real name is Edith Rose Sawyer, your family's pretty fucked up, here's a big house with a giant psychopath man-child living in the basement. Enjoy! If you think Grandma looks familiar, well, it's because she's played by Marilyn Burns, who played the final girl Sally in the original movie. The film ends with Heather, Edith, deciding to quickly forgive Jed for killing everyone she came here with and become roommates. Aw, how sweet.
You know what else would be sweet? Finding out the fate of Texas Chainsaw 3D. Oh wait, there's actually a little after credits scene, which is kind of funny.
Here we see Heather's former adopted parents, Gavin and Arlene Miller, arriving at the doorstep to the Sawyer home.
Remember, you tell her that you love her.
For this kind of money, I almost do.
As they await Heather coming to the door, instead they get to say hello to Jed and his chainsaw.
All right, anyways, let's try that again. And let's find out the fate of Texas Chainsaw 3D and figure out if it's good enough to grab or is one we want to stab. First up are the kills. There were a total of 18 deaths in this movie, which is technically a franchise record. Although it was pretty inflated with that opening sequence to the movie where a lot of people died right off the bat. But this isn't really surprising for the genre, as it seemed like during this time especially, every horror movie was really just trying to one-up each other as far as that shock factor and that gore and that violence, so not really surprising. Case in point, when Kenny died in this movie, getting cut in half was a super bloody and graphic scene for sure. I would have to say my favorite death goes to the mayors at the end of the movie. Yeah, I know it was ridiculous, the graphics were not really that good, but it was kind of funny, and I also thought it was a little bit of a twist and kind of unique that I found myself rooting for Leatherface during that fight. Overall though, the kills in this movie, they were pretty good. Second are the characters. Now, this is where things start to go pretty far south for me. In my opinion, this is the worst cast and the worst acting up until this point in the franchise. And I know that's kind of saying something, but there were several times throughout the movie where I was distracted by how bad the acting was. Also, the characters, I didn't really find myself rooting for really anybody outside of maybe Sheriff Hooper. He was probably the only one I found myself really ever rooting for throughout the movie. I mean, Ryan, Nikki, and Daryl were all pieces of shit. Heather as our final girl, yeah, she's hot and she's got great eyeshadow, but probably my second least favorite final girl in the franchise behind Michelle from the third movie. Also, Leatherface now being the hero in the movie. I mean, I'm all for trying new things and testing new things and stuff like that, but that just wasn't a good move. I mean, look at the most successful movies in this franchise, with Andrew Badinsky playing that more menacing Leatherface, Gunnar Hansen playing the Leatherface from the original movie. Fantastic job. That works in this franchise. This did not work. Also, the characters constantly made stupid decisions over and over and over, which I know is pretty standard for a horror movie, but still. I mean, when the cop was scanning the house, and he was FaceTiming with the mayor on it. I mean, it is a funny scene that you can make fun of, which I do enjoy that kind of stuff. Of course, you guys know this, but it was completely ridiculous. That was just completely ridiculous. Also, Mayor Burt being the main bad guy in the story, he's not really intimidating. He's not really a good villain. I didn't really like. Also, why does he hate the Sawyers so much? Didn't really quite understand that too well. Overall, the characters, not very good. Third, how did the movie affect either the genre or the franchise at the time? Now, this movie did do pretty well financially, like I mentioned earlier. So it kind of further confirms just slapping Texas Chainsaw Massacre, really any of these major franchises on any sort of a movie, is gonna bring you in a baseline amount of success financially, which is good for the horror genre and good for the franchise, of course. This movie was definitely a mixed bag of reviews. Some fans as well love this movie, and some fans absolutely hate this movie. Overall, I'd say the effect it had on the genre, money talks. So the genre effect and the franchise effect, you know, pretty positive. Nothing huge, but pretty positive. Fourth, how scary was the movie? Now, if I had to kind of look at the overall franchise so far in general, I would kind of put this movie in the middle of the pack. It had some good jump scares in it, it had some good gore and things like that, but on a kind of a scare scale, I'd probably give it like a 5 out of 10. You have to think about also what makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially the original, scary for a lot of people. I've mentioned this before, but it's because it's not a supernatural film, and they're events that people could imagine themselves getting into or somebody they care about getting into. Whereas this movie, how many of us can like relate to somebody inheriting a mansion and then there happens to be some like cannibalistic psychopath man-child in the basement? It's not really like that relatable of a story, which I think hurts this movie in general, but like I said, did have some good jump scares if you're into that kind of thing, but overall, was it a scary movie? Not really. And with all that said, I'm gonna have to go with a stab on this one. Now, I do want to point out some things that I did like about the movie first. The movie was watchable at times in kind of a ridiculous, kind of a funny way. Like I mentioned earlier, the gore was solid. Also, they did a really good job recreating the slaughterhouse at the beginning of the movie. So props to everybody involved in making that part of the movie. But the writing, the directing, case in point, the timeline of the movie, like what? So Heather's supposed to be a baby in 1974. This movie clearly takes place in present times, as her cell phone's all over the place, but Heather's maybe 20, 25 years old. She's supposed to be like 40-ish, something like that. That didn't really make much sense. Also, Heather's whole character flip towards the end of the movie where she's at the police station, you know, reading through those police documents, learning more about her family, learning more about the incidents to her family. And I get it, like that's all probably pretty shocking and good information to know about the heritage of who you are, but she's supposed to just completely flip and forget that her friends that she came here with were just turned into ribeye steaks just a few hours ago? Like what? And now she's supposed to babysit this now 70-year-old Leatherface until, you know, whenever he dies or something like that. I mean, I'm all for taking care of the elderly, but if any of my cousins are listening, if you start eating people and chopping people up and killing people, you're changing your own diapers, bro. But anyways, I'm gonna have to go with a stab on this one. And that wraps up Texas Chainsaw 3D. Next week, we jump 4 years into the future and take a look at Leatherface, a prequel to Texas Chainsaw 3D. In the meantime, though, I'm Matt McFarland, and you just finished watching Grab or Stab. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you enjoy horror content like this, or just horror content in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications as well. Also, all of my social media links will be down below in the description, including my Twitter, my Instagram, my Twitch, all that kind of stuff. Also, be on the lookout for new Grab or Stab episodes coming out every single Friday. So I will see you all next Friday, and as always, take care.